And now it's my pleasure to introduce and turn over the webinar to Rear Admiral Retired Mike Lydon, the Chairman of the Navy Supply Corps Foundation, who will introduce tonight's guest speaker. So, sir, over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Dan, and good evening, everyone. First, let me just thank Dan Pionk, our Executive Director of the Foundation, and Teresa Hood, the Executive Assistant, and Tara Naval, who helps out on our communication side. All three of them are your foundation team that make everything happen, along with the volunteer groups and board that help out with the foundation. So again, he said this is kind of a delight tonight. It's going to be our third evening with the chief, and we're deeply indebted to Admiral Stamatopoulos for just offering himself up so many times and really getting it into the details of what's going on. And both of his hats as the 49th Chief of Supply Corps and especially as the commander of the Naval Supply Systems Command. And just for a moment, for anybody out there that might not know this guy and the incredible background that he has, no bio spiel here, but when you look at what this gentleman has done, it's just extraordinarily diversified. I mean, from a aircraft or airplane squadron, submarine, amphibious ship, aircraft carrier, expeditionary support group, and then operational staffs. And that's how he came up the ladder through those billets. And then as a flag officer, equally diversified with being the supply officer for FFC down in Norfolk, Virginia, then moving up to Washington as N41, then crossing the ocean into the joint world as the UCOM J4, and then finally moving into his first billet that we find him with again tonight. And with a short time to go, we're especially happy to be able to hear from him. And we've got your questions out there, so we'll throw them at him tonight and see how we do. But over to you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Admiral Lydon, very much for the invitation. I absolutely love doing this. And Dan, thank you for putting this all together and facilitating this. It's great to be able to get back together. And to all of you who join in, thank you for your time as well. I've got 30 days left, but who's counting? So this has been an exciting 3-year ride here as 49 and then the NAVSUP commander. And boy, it's been an exciting time, as I've said. We've made great progress in end-to-end supply chain integration across the whole of Navy and the joint community, if you will. And we've got a really motivated and well-prepared community to take on the challenges going into the future. And there will be plenty of challenges in this decade of concern. There's no doubt about that. And we also have our own internal challenges with regard to our community and the community health and making sure that we can stay and keep and retain and promote and keep our officers, engaged in really high impact supply chain jobs across the whole of Navy and the joint force here. And I'd be happy to talk with you all about that as we go. But other than that, tonight, we don't have any slides, and we're just going to kind of have a conversation. And thank you all for submitting a bunch of questions, and I'll do my best to try and answer them. I did not study beforehand, so if I don't get it completely right, I might have to take a look up and get back with you. But with that, let's start the conversation.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Yes, so what I thought we'd do this evening is we'll kind of focus on the two roles that he has. First as the commander and then as the chief of the supply corps. And then we'll kind of talk to him about his career a little bit to finish it off. And I think that'll be very interesting for folks there. So let's start with NAVSUP, the COM, as he likes to be called. And in past briefings, he's told us about NSS Supply and what an incredible initiative is and all of the progress that it's made. So one of the things in there is this end-to-end digital supply chain. And a lot of folks just look at that and say, oh, NAVSUP. But really, what he's got the dot for supply chain across Navy. And that's what I'd like to just have him talk about a little bit is where we are bringing that integrated supply chain to the Navy, not just NAVSUP.
Yeah, you bet. It's a great question. And so I tell you, as you all know, and you've heard me talk about this before, we as the Naval Supply Systems Command and the commander of the Naval Supply Systems Command, but also the chief of the Supply Corps is the Navy's end-to-end supply chain integrator writ large, the entire thing. And we've really stepped up into that role. It's codified in OpNav instructions. And more important than that, it is codified in the head of every single senior leader, a Navy flag officer from 4 stars all the way down to brand new flags. When they think of this supply corps community and they think of supply officers, they absolutely expect us to be running the end-to-end supply chains for all Navy. And that's all commodities as well. And even though we may not actually have the dot on our forehead, for instance, for subsistence, we are still involved and responsible for the overall integration of that commodity, all of them. It doesn't matter where you're at. And so this is when we really talk about the Navy integrated end-to-end supply chain. That's what we're talking about. You've heard me say that from the tactical edge aboard our ships and our submarines up through the operational level of war, where we serve in a variety of numbered fleets, CTF-X3s, OCONUS distribution centers, geographic combatant commander staff, numbered fleet staffs, all the way up into what we call the fourth generation foundry, which is really where our forces are generated in CONUS via maintenance, basic training, intermediate, advanced training, and the like, where we have to bring all the pieces together to make sure the man, train, and equip comes together. That's at that foundry level, where really we as the supply chain integrators and managers, that's where a lot of activity occurs for us. And then upstream into the acquisition realm, the defense acquisitions system, where we're really focused in on all elements of acquisition support, whether it's financial management, inventory, contracting, acquisition, IT, transportation, and a variety of other. We have 20 competencies that our supply corps officers are involved with and making end-to-end supply chains effective and affordable. So that's when we talk about that end-to-end integration. And as we look forward, we know that our supply chains are more and more digital than ever before. And so, a lot of questions oftentimes come up is, where are we with regard to the digital supply chain end to end? And, that's a journey that the Navy continues to be on. There's at a time that there was over 400 log IT and business systems across the Navy. A lot of them were disaggregated, disconnected. And over the course of the past, 5, 6, 7 years, we've been moving as a Navy to kind of rationalize and take a little bit more control and understanding. The new establishment of PEOMLB was one step in that direction. Also, to be able to harness the resources from across multiple resource sponsors and multiple commands, to be able to kind of focus the resources so that we can make sure we've got them applied as a Navy to the right areas. So we're moving in the right direction there. But as you all know, digital supply chains are really not about the technology. It's really about the business processes and the culture change within. And we're definitely on a path moving forward that's going to make us much better. We have modernization going on out on our ships with now COMAS, OMS-NG is moving, and our supply moving in the right direction for modernization efforts with regard to those systems to be able to operate in a disconnected environment at sea. Upstream from that, we have really our big engine, which is the Navy ERP, and we're going to continue to use that as our accountable property system of record, as well as our financial system, as we neck down all the financial type of programs that are out there into a single ledger. We used to have 9 ledgers. Now we're down to 1 or 2 ledgers. That's what we're doing. And we're about to go through an ERP modernization here we're excited about, where we're really going to get back to that original dream, which was, let's employ an ERP without all the customizations. Like, as you know, we did many customizations over the course of time. And that's been really difficult to maintain those customizations, but that was in a time where we really kind of sort of had to in a lot of ways, I guess. But now it's a different world. We're in a different place, and we're committed to employing the next version of ERP, S4, and we're going to start to bring into it things like more enhanced financial management, cash management, acquisition, contracting. Ooh, that's right. I said that, which is something else. So we can make sure that our contracting and our cash management is in the same box, so we can have better clarity, visibility, and transparency of how we're doing our business in particular, which is the supply support element. That's one, that's a lot said there, but that's end-to-end supply chains are huge. And we're absolutely the right community with the most comprehensive view to be able to see that all the way across.
Sure. So let's just pick up on that one. You talked about the business process and that, but another big piece that integrates it is the data. And how are we doing in terms of, the Nav Air engineers have their data, NAVC shipyards have their data, WSS has its, where's that all going? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, so I see a whole lot more collaboration and sharing of data. But still, because this is a big Navy, you still have a variety of data lakes that may be out there. And I'm not so sure that that's necessarily a bad thing. We kind of say the data is the sun. Really, it's about the data, and then it's how you employ that data and exploit it, use it. And we're all still, working to be able to make the best use of it. But more and more, like what I've done for our BSC, our Business Systems Center, which is one of our 11 major commands within the Naval Supply Systems Command. It is our command that is dedicated to business systems and logistics IT, not only for NAVSUP, but for the whole Navy. And we have a dashboard that the commander, Dave Carnell, reviews with the entire enterprise 3 times a week, where we're monitoring many, not all, but many of the systems across the Navy that we're all dependent upon, not just us NAVSUP, but others, Nav Air, NAVC, et cetera. So we're engaged with our mission partners. We help them with data. They help us with data, but we all have our own uses and applications to be able to solve tough problems. Like I said, we're sharing the data more. NSS Supply has really been a big, and NSS Aviation and Shipyard has really been a big proponent for breaking down barriers, identifying the sources of data, and then gaining access to that for the use of a variety of applications and tools that all of the SysComs have. So, we're moving in the right direction on it, and I don't see it stopping. These supply chains are more and more reliant and dependent upon the digital threads that go across them all.
Sure. Okay, good. That's good to hear. So before we move kind of offshore into the operational side of NAVSUP, just what's it like going into the meetings with all the 4-stars and everything? Any good stories there on that?
Well, yeah, that's I tell you what, it's because we're doing it on a monthly basis, at least a monthly basis with the Navy Corporate Forum, and that's for NSS Supply. And P2P we do on a quarterly basis, again with all of the 4-stars. And it can be uncomfortable, especially in the beginning when there was actually a lot of questions, a lot of training, a lot of shared understanding that was going on. Remember, we're a supply community, and we talk oftentimes in our own supply lingo. And oftentimes, we have a surface warfare admiral or an aviator or a submariner, and they talk in different languages from different tribes, which is why we try to, when we engage with them, we really try to focus on the data and a variety of DMAIC tools where we can measure our systems, our processes around key control points, and really kind of let the data speak for itself, because that data can then be an equalizer across different tribes, if you will, who don't necessarily talk the same language. So it can be unnerving sometimes to be in front of them, especially if we have some tough problems and we've got barriers that we need to get solved. And oh, by the way, I've never go into these meetings expecting that we're going to get a decision right away. Sometimes it takes some time for these seniors to chew on the bone. It takes 2-3 engagements, meetings after the meetings to help them further understand. And that's kind of what I've seen. But it's great to have their attention and their ear, and they're willing to break down barriers for us and help us out, which is really nice for us as a community.
Oh, absolutely. That's super. So let's move offshore. You've talked to us before about your weekly battle rhythm, where
Yeah.
you bring in all your commanders and key people around the world and kind of get the operational update. How's that going? Is that?
Yeah, to me, that's going great. I mean, again, as I talked to you before about that, it's basically 5 days a week, 1 hour per day. Sometimes it goes over, to hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. And we get that morning update brief on Mondays from our ACOMs within the Naval Supply Systems Command. And we have now, literally, we have 180 to over 200 people joining us on Teams for these from all over the globe, which is pretty impressive. And it kind of level sets everybody. So we had a great meeting this Monday, yesterday. The chief of staff ran it. I just listened in and monitored it, but it's really neat. We were able to get through it in 48 minutes, which is nice, but it gives you hard-hitting, impactful status of what's happening across the ACOMs on what matters most to us. And then, on that Wednesday with the commander's update brief, where the FLCs, BSC, WSS comes in and briefs. And now, once a month during that Wednesday Cub, we bring in the 4 Navy public shipyard code 500s. And we have those Navy captains briefing us on their material management challenges and issues that they have in the shipyard in support of the submarines and the aircraft carriers. So again, it elevates across the entire NAVSUP enterprise what's happening across the globe, the challenges are there, and then you would be surprised the crosstalk then that occurs amongst commands and amongst all sorts of different codes to be able to help people solve problems. So it's pretty inspirational. On Fridays, we ended up with another morning update brief with a campaign of learning, where we'll have a different learning topic that we go over every single Friday. And then, as you know, on Thursdays, I have a plans and future ops brief, where we bring in all of those operational planners that are positioned inside the numbered fleets and the Navy component commands. And they give us a really comprehensive view of our exercises that are going on, current operations that are happening out within their AORs, and also the planning efforts in support of their component commander and the geographic combatant command. So we'll have visibility of plan development. And this is all unclassified. We don't get into classified stuff, but it all makes us aware. And then we look at a big synchronization map, 30, 60, 90 days of everything that's happening. Most recently, Navy has been also, we have a Get Real, Get Better campaign that's underway across the whole of Navy. And what we'll do is on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock, we'll bring in once a month, we have a Get Real, Get Better training session, and where the whole enterprise joins in. And then each CO and their team will provide about a 45-minute to hour update on the improvement projects that they have using a variety of DMAIC tools, 5 why questions. How do you really break down all of your processes, establish those key control points. And we've seen some incredible work. And what's really unique about that, because you folks out there, and including the retirees and everything, you all know we have an incredible use of the black belt tools, right? We have the black belts, the green belts. And so we've been doing that for a long time. The only thing that's a little bit different here with the Get Real, Get Better program is now we have a mechanism by which we can go across to commands outside the Naval Supply Systems Command. We set up governance, at the local level, or, up at the ESH3 level or ESH2 level, in order to get after really tough problems. And so, for instance, if we have a regional problem, like we have some issues that are going on over in Japan, we will include the regional commander, we will include the NAVFAC and the FEC, the Facilities Engineering Command, we'll include the FLC Command, we'll include PAC Fleet, and 4, we get all the relevant players together and we start tearing apart problems, processes, and then having those groups elevate barriers and then try to resolve the barriers. That's what's different about this, is it's a forum to be able to bring in others from outside and then actually take action on things.
Okay, good. Okay, so the operational planners is a great segue into contested logistics,
Yeah.
which, the fleets and the GCCs, that's the big game in town right now. We had a great question about that basically said, what is NAVSUP doing to kind of, engage that entire issue in terms of what has to change? And it was very detailed, talked about, how we're going to do feeding when we're cut off and disconnected operations and all those kinds of things. So where is NAVSUP in that world right now?
Yeah, so when the first to begin with, I would say when like many things, those words, contested logistics, contested environments, they can be awfully big words,
Yeah.
right? And so first off, I like to at least when I get into groups is let's talk about what we mean by contested and a contested environment. COVID was a contested environment for us. And there's you could have when our ports were getting kind of filled up, due to the supply chain challenges that were going on globally, that's a contested environment. And then of course we know from an operational standpoint with an adversary certainly can contest the environment both physically but also with regard to cyber and things like that. So first you got to really talk about where are we at in that regard. And we can start in a variety of different places, but one thing is we need our forces, our maritime forces, to be more self-sufficient and self-reliant. Okay, and that really starts on board the ship. Does that ship have the manning, the training? Is it equipped properly, and does it have the sustainment inside that skin of the ship to be able to carry out operations for at least 90 days? That's where it all begins. And so at the OPNAV Echelon level, they've come up with in the Naval Implementation Framework, a concept that's called E sub S, which stands for Endurance Supply. And the goal there is to have each unit self-sufficient for 90 days. That's just where we're starting off. So what does that mean in terms of food on board for submarines? Well, it's required us to rethink a little bit of what type of food that we put on the submarine. Freeze dries foods and some other types of things that are going out there to lengthen the amount of time that a submarine can stay on station. Same goes for surface ships and the bigger decks. But when we think about our co-sals, how much endurance do our co-sals really have on board? And then even when you get inside the co-sal, do we have the right endurance set for the weapon systems on that ship that matter most? Well, you have to know which of the weapon systems which matter most. And then that leads you down to, is that weapon system properly provisioned? Does it have the proper readiness, space sparing, assumptions that have been made there? And you can just keep pulling the string. And that's what we're doing in the P2P logistics effort. And then we come in on top of that with NSS Supply and look at some of those processes for improvement. Configuration management on board the ship. Again, the provisioning is a big deal. The models and updating the models and making sure that our engineer friends are actually monitoring the performance of these systems and then giving us the feedback that we need to be able to update the models to continuously look at and improve the support of these weapon systems. That's one of the things, many of the things we're doing for a contested environment. The other part of that is the food. You've heard of the term push logistics, right? And so there's been a variety of prototype experimentations that the fleet has been doing to be able to operate in a comms denied environment, to do push logistics and push food subsistence to a unit without them actually sending a demand signal back stateside to CONUS. And so those are efforts that are ongoing there through better utilization of the data that we are able to capture on board the ships and then understand back, at some of the fleet staffs, how those units may be actually eating through their supplies, and then what we can anticipate that we're going to get them. Those are just some samples of that, and it goes on and on and on. Really, it's where you want to focus on to get
Sure,
after.
sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a lot of just emphasis on the basics, and they just
It
become
is.
so much more important, like 90-day endurance and that. So,
Absolutely. A lot of the old timers here, I mean, when I was, first in, the submarine, it was like 90 days.
Yeah.
That's what we thought the COSAL was for, right?
Yeah.
It generally tended to work. We stayed out longer sometimes, than 90 days. But yeah, these are the things that we're coming back and revisiting.
okay, and just before we started, I gave the Admiral a bonus question in this area, so we could think about it, or whatever. And it's always kind of interesting when somebody comes into a job, particularly so, almost 30 years in the business or whatever, but when he becomes the comm, and I asked him what surprised him the most when he came into the job on the NAVSUP side.
Yeah, on the NAVSUP side. Well, I tell you, when I was turning over the UCOM J4 position with Duke Hines, Admiral Hines, we were walking in Stuttgart together, and Duke looked at me and made the comment. He goes, Pete, you don't look like you're that nervous about taking over NAVSUP. And I'm like, why should I be? And he just shook his head. He's like, oh my God. He goes, it's going to be something, from his viewpoint as the WSS commander, and then watching the Naval Supply Systems Command and everything that the commander was involved in. He knew it was going to be a firestorm coming. I didn't. So, in taking over the command, it is vast, obviously. The big thing for me is that many of the commands, the mission partners that were out there, whether it's the fleets, they love their supply officer. They love the support we give them. They didn't always understand and know, what really is NAVSUP all about? What really is it? That's always been, in my view, a struggle, is to describe that. And fortunately, things aligned right with the right leadership, and we were able to kick off the NSS supply, which really put front and center, the power of not only NAVSUP in end-to-end supply chain integration, but the entire community needs to be energized, in order to be able to make that all happen, down at the deck plate level in squadrons, up to the type commanders, submarines, into the submarine groups, et cetera, all the way up. And so it's a lot bigger and vaster than what I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was big, but the demand signals placed on by each of the warfare communities, the surface community, and you all know the challenges that we have in the maritime, the submarine community, the aviation community, the expeditionary. And so how do you organize from a commander's perspective to be able to keep tabs and understand what's happening across the Naval Supply Systems Command, and then face outward to your mission partners, and then be able to make those connections back and forth with information flowing? And what are the type of decision points that you're going to need in support of the type commanders, the fleet commanders, et cetera, going down the road? And remember, here's another thing, right? It's not just about the parts. That's just part of it. We're doing acquisition out at the FLCs. We're doing household goods moves. We're doing fuel operations, and also the Navy Exchange Command,
yeah.
Right? And that's a capability. And the lodging is a capability. It's not just, that's NEXCOM by itself. They're in our battle rhythms as well, because it is a huge warfighting advantage and capability that we have, especially in our Oconus locations. So managing all that, and that's, by the way, why I have used the term COM, or Commander of NAVSUP. Okay, and that was very controversial, especially with some of the senior flag officers, retirees, and whatnot, because it's always been the chief, and it is the chief. It is the chief. But within NAVSUP, I wanted to change that to give that whole of command, 11 major commands, the understanding that we are a command, and we act like a command, and we're going to share information. We're going to have decision points, battle rhythms, and we have a mission, and we have mission partners that we have to work with. So that was the idea behind making the Naval Supply System a more operational focused, which is something we all try to do. But it was taking those learnings from UCOM during a time when UCOM, as you know, was now back on a war footing. not just theater security cooperation, back on a war footing. And that's kind of what, I felt was probably the biggest eye opener to me, is how are you going to harness this to be able to apply it effectively across the whole of Navy, if that makes sense. We tried.
Absolutely. And I think anybody out there, whether you were in 3 years or 30 years, I think you can't not be impressed by what he's done as the comm and leading NAVSUP and the entire supply chain system through some challenging times and setting it up for the future. So, okay, so we're going to leave the comm behind and we're going to move to the chief right now. And I think for those of you that were in the previous ones, he gave us some great descriptions of how they're tracking the health of the Corps and where the issues are and those sorts of things. So one of the things I asked him, if we get just a brief update on what are the key takeaways from what we've learned from you before, what's really important right now in terms of the health of the Corps.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the biggest eye opener for me was really how little I knew and others around me knew about community management. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about, hey, being a good coach or a good mentor. I'm talking about the management of the entire community, sessions, how those really take place and who is in charge of them, how the whole of Navy makes changes to the community through manpower change requests and village change requests. That was an area that I did not know or understand much about. And when I started to peel the onion, I quickly found out that many more than me didn't know about that, but that commands across the Navy are able to make changes, without the chief's visibility, which are affecting the community. Buying, if you will, requesting more control grades, captains and commanders with no coordination on the accession side. So, if you're gonna be a command and say, gee whiz, I want another Navy Supply Corps captain, well, that's great. Let's go get you one. But we don't have the accessions of the junior supply officers coming in as ensigns to be able to support, those additional control grade officers, at the high end, at the 05 and the 06 level. There was that piece that was going on. There was also things like how we manage the promotion plans, frankly, weren't well understood. Our self-talk was, we promote to vacancy. Okay, and that's what we all thought. We promote to vacancy. Well, that created some effects on the community. If we have 30 captains that are retiring and we go ahead and we promote to 30 captains and we don't have the 05 commanders, or we don't have the 04s or the 03s, it's just going to pull and drag junior officers through the promotion pipeline earlier than what makes sense. And that's the situation over the course of many, many years that we find ourselves in today. We find ourselves in a situation where we've been promoting to vacancy. We continue to fill captain billets. That pulls commanders up to captains. That then creates more 05s that are moving from 04 to 05. That creates holes for the 03s. And we're now in a situation where we've got too many holes within the system. And it's really requiring us to take a much, much harder and comprehensive look of the end-to-end management of the community. I mean, it is not within the control of the chief, all of that. It is not in the control of the detailers, most of that. It is not control of the office, the OCM. No, it's not. It's a variety of organizations across the Navy, to include in BUPERS, that all have a hand in that. And that wasn't well understood. And so that's what we've started to kind of map out, to understand, and then to target areas where I need to go in and work with other senior leaders to be able to make those fixes. As an example, over the course of time, we had given away some OCS billets. Okay, We were relying more on Hawker billets. Those are billets where an officer may be in a different pipeline and for a variety of reasons is moving out of that community and looking for a new community. We relied on that very heavily over the course of the years. Well, those Hawkers have dried up and other communities are taking priority over the NAVSUP or rather the supply corps. We didn't see that coming. So, I would say the community overall, we're healthy from the standpoint of never before have we been in such demand, such relevant, and so engaged. We need to take a serious look. We've got 2,200 supply corps officers. I don't know that they're all in the most impactful jobs across the whole of the Department of Defense. Okay, and that's really what we have to now, which is going to be the work for my successor, Admiral Epps, is really going to have to look at that hard with the rest of our flag community to make sure that we are getting that piece of it right. Remember, because we have the excess inventory, we had fewer, billets, if you will, and now all of a sudden the inventory in 2018-19 dipped below the authorized billets, and we have more billets that we've got to fill than inventory, and we've got to be able to change that dynamic, and that's what we need to work on.
So you talked about the functional areas that the supply corps is engaged in, like financial management, acquisition, and that. We had a question, is there a critical area that the supply corps really needs to improve in? Is there one that jumps out at you?
Well, I will tell you this, and for a lot of my career, we had always, kind of been hearing about the importance of the subspecialty code, the DOEA certifications and qualifications. And frankly, that created these little tribes within the supply corps community. I'm a contracting guy. I'm a financial guy. I'm a planner guy. Hey, where's my career path for a financial guy? Where's my career path for an OR guy? Hey, this is the deal. We're all end-to-end supply chain integrators, and it takes all of us to be able to do that. And the reality of it is our young people and this generation have in fact been chasing after DOEA certifications and subspecialty codes. And the reality of it is they're unable to get those qualifications for a couple of reasons. One, the Defense Acquisition University, DAU, does not just have open enrollment for everybody to go inside and take those courses. Those courses were predominantly designed and made for a civilian workforce. Okay, that's what their main purpose was for. Okay, so you've got that element of there. Officers can't get it. You also have a bunch of billets that are coded billets. Well, there is nobody managing those coded billets. That's right, that's what I said. There is no centralized management of it. Back in the olden days, the Naval Postgraduate School, in order to justify the curriculums that they had, you had to have subspecialties that the Naval Postgraduate School would create billets for, and then those billets would then feed into and be sprinkled across the Navy, out into all these different commands, where, oh, by the way, no one's managing that. Any command can put a subspecialty code in just because. And we saw a lot of manipulation over the course of the years where an officer will come in, has a particular certification, not sitting in the billet, says, hey, I think I'm going to create this billet for myself. And they'll code the billet, they'll get the advantage of it, but the system is not able to catch up and continue to detail in. So that's been a whole big mess. And it's been frustrating for our junior officers. So what happened in February 1st of 2022, the entire DOEA certification process has been changed. And right now, it's not stable. Okay, so they're turning it in. They've upended the certification process, and they're making it a lifelong learning process. So really, that DOEA certifications right now, they don't have a whole lot of meaning to me, quite frankly. Okay, so what I've done in the precepts and in the convening orders now, and in our supply corps values, I am not doing away with subspecialty codes. Absolutely not. They're important. They make us better officers. They give us a better field of view in particular areas, financial, contracting, et cetera. But I'm asking the boards to de-emphasize that and to re-emphasize sustained superior performance. Too much of the force is chasing after subspecialty code badges. Let me get my badge, which is really an academic drill plus a time in the seat bill. That's not a good judge, right? We want to get back to performance. Performance is what matters. You're a supply chain officer, supply core officer. We need financial, we need contracting, acquisition, IT, you name it. And as far as I'm concerned, you all can go in and lead across that end-to-end supply chain. I don't know if that makes
No,
any
that's
sense to you.
good. That's good. Yeah, yeah. I think it kind of answers the question of generalist versus or well-rounded career versus.
Yeah. So here,
stovepipe.
yeah. So here we go. We have 5 warfare pins that we can get now. 5, and there's 20 competencies. Now there's different levels between some of those competencies, so there's overlap, but all of those things matter in running end-to-end supply chains, right? And we're a small community, and we do a lot of things. So a lot of these young kids are writing in on their surveys. They want a checklist for what's the promotion criteria. And there is none. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're not going to have that. You know, focus on your performance. Another thing that they get upset about is the RISCA or the senior reporting averages that are out there. And I have to remind them, hey, look, the way the fitness reports are today, this is a commanding officer's assessment of your performance. Never lose sight of that. It is only a single commanding officer's view of you. And over the course of time, many commanding officers will rate your performance. And over time, that's how professional reputation is built. That's how sustained superior performance is measured, is over time. Don't get wrapped around the axle because you don't have a subspecialty code or you don't have a coded billet. If you have the opportunity to get one, get one. You have the opportunity to do a DWIA course, do it. Do your own self-study. Be a better officer. But careers are built off of performance, not on badges.
Okay, so we're going to take that and we're going to move it into the future. We had a great question about where do you see the supply corps in 20 years and what education and skill sets. And before you start, I did the math this afternoon and I figure your successor in 2043 is probably a lieutenant commander right now.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
so you got to, how do we look at that 20 years out? Where do you think?
Yeah. So again, what right now, in the convening orders and the values, we're just trying to de-emphasize a little bit the subspecialty codes. That doesn't mean don't do them. You're going to have to do them. That's part of career progression, but focusing on performance. The other thing I put into those convening orders and such is to encourage people to seek education. So postgraduate education, whether it is a fully funded Navy postgraduate education or whether you go out and do it on your own. To me, it doesn't matter whether you go to a naval postgraduate school, you go to a war college, or you go to one of the other funded programs that are out there or unfunded programs. Pursue your education. That's important. But one of the things is that we're telling folks is, to the extent that you can, we take you from whatever bachelor's degree you may have. But when it comes down to your postgraduate education, we prefer to you to take them in business-oriented degrees to include data science, operational research, and the like. So we're encouraging folks to move because the digital environment is not slowing down. It's getting more intense, and we want our young people to continue to move in that direction to get as much as they can on data science and degrees that use and integrate digital information and data, among other things.
You getting any questions from the younger officers about when you're going to get into AI and those sorts of things?
Yeah,
Are they
AI
jumping around on that.
Yeah, sure. AI is a big thing out there, and it's again, we're gonna use it. But I ask anybody, what is AI? Autonomous, and well, who's behind that? Who are the companies that create these AIs? We don't, these companies are not on the tip of our tongue, many of us. We know that that's coming, and it's really starts again, in my viewpoint, with we have a lot of transactional systems that are out there to effectuate our business. We have logistics systems that are out there to help us understand the operating environment. All of that is, digital information. And then how are we going to be able to use these new tools like machine learning and AI to be able to make sense of the data? As an example, and you guys know this, but if you go into a hardware systems command and you look at the massive amount of engineering data that happens to be out there and provisioning data, all in the manuals, all inside, systems out there, all of that information impacts our supply support. It really does. Okay. But there's tens of thousands of files and sources. And it's really beyond the comprehension of a human being to really sort that out and make sense of it. When you think of all of those tens of thousands of flat files that are out there, many of them, hundreds, maybe thousands, contain NSNs, they contain part numbers, they contain other technical data, and there's no guarantee that that technical data is correct in each one of those.
Sure.
And so when you put it into these machines and you use the AI and you designate what is the authoritative data source, you can then proliferate, a more accurate and precise, management data across all of the files. And then you can start to see things, the machine can start to see things that we're just unable to be able to correlate. The other thing is on the web, you all go out and use your Google searches. Well, there's a whole advanced realm of searches that are out there that are beyond my comprehension. But you can scrape off of the web lots of information that is open source information, and you can see with incredible clarity what's happening in many of our suppliers beyond what we even can see ourselves. And so that's really when you start to do that, and these are supply chain risk management tools that happen to be out there. That's, I think, really where we're kind of going in the future, is as you scrape up, use all this data, put it into these data lakes, IDEs, apply AI and some other tools to them, we're going to see combinations start to form that we would never have known existed. So I think that's where we're going to eventually be going out in the future. I wish I was a futurist and I could tell, but I can't. But it's boy, it's exciting. It's less about the technology, and it's more about the people and the change and the culture change.
Yeah. Well, I think we can clearly say it's going to be an exciting time for the younger officers as they come up to the ranks. And I suspect right now all the lieutenant commanders are looking left and right and trying to figure out who that person is or whatever, but we'll leave that up to them. So, hey, one last, just to kind of close out the chief role, the supply corps school up there. I know it's not directly under you, but kind of how does that fit into the future? Okay, sure. Well, let me say this. So it is true. The supply corps school is under the Naval Education Training Command, right? Yeah. And we have a supply corps captain that leads that. And I just want to say for the record that as a part of the Get Real, Get Better, program that's out there across the whole of Navy, I'm in a group of 3 stars that are really implementing the Get Real, Get Better. And I got yelled at by the crew that said, "You own the supply corps school. It's yours. I don't care what organization it's under. It's yours. It's yours. So, okay, I get it. As the chief, and my role as the end-to-end integrator, and C2 is a state of mind. I do work very closely with Jason Warner and the CSS team up there, and our board of visitors, which, oh, by the way, the board of visitors are a bunch of 06s and senior listed from across the whole of Navy that come together to discuss curriculum upgrades that we're going to do and kind of make those changes quickly, because we're also doing ready, relevant learning across the Navy, right? Which is in our supply enlisted ratings. So yeah, the school has a huge role. We've got a phenomenal education. Jason Warner is doing a fantastic job building upon the success of Mike York, who built upon the success of his predecessors. And that school is really rocking. And you've been up there recently. Yep. And for all of you that, if you're ever in that Newport area, I highly recommend you go by and pay a visit to the school there.
It's impressive. The officers are phenomenal who are detailed into that as instructors. And of course, the student body is vibrant and motivated to get out there and operate. So it's not going away. It's going to keep doing wonderful things. We're teaching Get Real, Get Better in there. We're teaching about the bigger system, if you will. And then of course, our SODIC senior officer department head course remains a phenomenal course, as well as many others that we have there. It's a great school.
Okay, great. Okay, so now I want to segue one last time.
Mhm.
And so you're not coming to the end of anything. You're just coming up to a transition to your next level of success in that. So, people always wonder, why'd you make it a career? When did you know it was going to be a career? And how do you answer that?
Yeah, well, I tell you, for me personally, I did not come from a military family that made a career out of the military. However, all of the men in my family growing up when I was a young child, they all had served in some capacity in World War II, in Korea. My father happened to be a supply corps officer for 3 years during the Korean War, and that's the last thing that I was going to do, is do what my dad did and be a supply corps officer, for sure. But I knew from the very beginning that I was going to serve, and my plan was to serve. I viewed it as a rite of passage. And I determined that I was going to serve when I was about in the 6th grade, after I decided my all-star, baseball all-star stuff was over. No, it was good. I was good, man. I was great. I was good. However, kind of looking to the future, I said, there's got to be more out there, and I am going to be a naval officer. And of course, I was from San Diego, and I had a lot of Navy around. The other thing that kind of inspired me at that point was I went to a junior high school in San Diego. And my dad would drop me off at work, at school, and I would go into the math class like many kind of kids do and kind of brush up on your math and do proofs. And it was up on a plateau in San Diego, and there was a chain link fence, and I would get there earlier than the teacher, so I'd stand at the fence. And that was back in the olden days when NAS Miramar, Naval Air Station Miramar, if you recall, they would fly the airplanes at 6 o'clock in the morning to simulate takeoffs and landings, with the sun behind them, and then at the end of the day with the sun coming down. So it dawned on me as a 7th grader, however old I was, 13 years old, that golly, in about 7 or 8 years, I could potentially be a naval officer flying in these jets, and that really hit me. I said, I better get hot and start taking the schoolwork really seriously. But once I got in, I did not plan on making it a career. And like many of you get surrounded by teammates who are better than you, and you start going, oh my goodness, I am learning from these officers, my peers and seniors, and I'm benefiting from this. And for me, the value of that outweighed the reason to get out. And I just kept sticking with it. I did not know that I was going to make it a career until after I came out of the Naval Postgraduate School. And I'm like, oh boy, now I'm at the 10.5-year point. I'm past the halfway point. And I thought I was over with. But at any rate, I continued onward and just competed against myself, is what my goal was. My goal was to be a senior officer engaged in national security decision-making. And oh, by the way, I defined senior as an 05. That's all I did. I just kept my eye on the ball and just tried to learn as much as I could, left and right. So I loved it. This has been phenomenal for me. I've enjoyed this. Every job has been great. What else you got?
Well, as you went through that career, right, you got to be of a certain age to remember the 20-year plans. Remember, some of us remember it's your career in that.
Yes.
So did you have a 20-year
I did.
plan?
So coming off of the submarine, in San Diego, when we came back from Desert Storm 32 Days for Freedom, my skipper, who was an 05, said, I think you ought to go over to that, supply center over there and meet with the supply corps officer. I'd never seen a supply corps captain. So I got an appointment, went across to then, NSC San Diego or NSD San Diego, whatever it was. And there was a guy by the name of Captain Scuddy who was there, right?
Absolutely.
And his XO was Al Banghart, Captain Banghart. And I remember coming up into their office, which was huge and palatial. And I was just like, oh my God, coming off of a submarine. And I remember Al Banghart, it was kind of funny. He sat me down on the couch while the Captain or Admiral Select Scuddy was going around getting ready for an evening event. And I remember Al Banghart said, Pete, being in the supply corps is like being in a country club. Is what he said. I'm like, I'm just this palatial office and everything. And then he pulled out and he said, your career is going to go by so quickly. Have you ever mapped it out? It's your career.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of that before. And so when I was done there, I went out there and I drew on the piece of paper 3 columns.
Yeah.
One column was that Navy column, from 01 to 06. And then I had 2 other columns. And one column was as if I got out and went into, the regular job in the commercial sector. And then the other one is if I got out and went to work for government. I didn't even know what that meant, work for government. And then, you have your little age gates. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, golly, one day I'm going to be 40 years old. Where would I expect to be? Well, by this thing, I would be a commander in the Navy. Well, what's the equivalent in the commercial sector? What's the equivalent in the public sector? And that's kind of how I started to view the world. And then I kept that with me. I should have brought it in tonight, but I still have that exact one that Al Banghart inspired me. It was all marked up along the way. And I used that as my little path, but only to think about what the future was. I didn't get too far ahead of my skis. But if you don't kind of at least think a little bit about that, the time goes so quickly,
Okay.
you're gonna miss things. But what a great time it's been.
Yeah. So hopefully that thing is still around and
It is.
and people are using it. That
Well,
was
no, it's better now. The real one, and
oh,
it's your career. We have 4 or 5 playbooks.
oh,
It's
okay.
your career, it's your board, it's your mentor, and these are playbooks that the Supply Corps has put together over the course of years, which are actually still relevant today. And you can see all of those things inside there. They've been great tools for us.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I had a last question that was, what do you think your key success factors are? But I think we don't need to ask you. I think those of us watching you and that have known you, we can peg them with, dedication, focus, passion for the job. A lot of smarts in there too, and just success oriented. So,
Yeah, well, I tell you, the entire Supply Corps team is responsible, okay, for essentially getting in this last 2.5 to 3 years over $2.2 billion of supply chain benefit. Now we're up to, I just had a value summit where it's an operating review of all of our NSS waves. We're now through 5 waves. Each wave has 5 to 9 initiatives. We just looked at the new numbers, which are verifiable by the FMB crowd. We're now up to $815 million of year-over-year savings to our end-to-end Navy supply chains. That's incredible. And then when you look at that and you monetize the gains that we've seen in the readiness increase of the aircraft that we have, going from, essentially what it was, 250 airplanes, now up to north of 340, 350 airplanes. When you look at how we're attempting to measure the readiness of a surface ship by how many CAS reps it has on board, or CAS rep free, if you will. When you monetize all that, that's north of $8 billion worth of monetized readiness. If you monetize it.
Sure.
So there's been great improvements across the board, and it has been because we have energized that entire end-to-end supply chain, and all of the Supply Corps, the Vanguard, working closely with their maintenance counterparts across the whole of Navy, have a seat at the table. They're making, tangible impacts. They're changing the way we do business from the status quo. They're hunting for leverage. They're embracing the red. And boy, it's exciting to see them just take off. And this is not just at the TICOMs. This is in warfare centers. This is down in the FRCs, down at the Navy shipyards, at the in the program offices. It is amazing to see. We know our business now, certainly better every single day we're engaged in this. So
Okay. Well, I'm the lucky guy because I'm sitting next to you, so I can thank you for everything you've done in person, but I have to admit or imagine I speak for everybody out there this evening that, Pete, we just, you've done an incredible job and we look forward to, watching you in the future or whatever, but we want to thank you for
You bet.
for making that decision after postgraduate school, sticking around, and for all the great stuff you've done in the jobs and with subs. So with that, I'll
Thank
give you
you.
the last word.
Yeah, so it's been a great movie to be inside, and the movie's going to continue on. Like all you all know, the actors come and they go, they change out, but the movie goes on. The environment changes, and we want to create a supply corps community that's agile and adaptive to the change, that they can see themselves clearer than ever before, that they're not afraid to embrace the red, speaking that truth to power, getting out there and really making a difference. That's what we want. That's what's going to happen in the future. The movie will go on. Ken Epps is going to be the director, and he is prepared for this, right? And it's going to be his movie, and it's going to be a great movie. You know what I mean? It's not this movie's over with. 30 days, tomorrow, 29 days. It's going to go on, and we're going to go to even better places. And I'm so excited for the future of the Supply Corps. And it's going to be awesome being able to see all of the success that's going to come in the future years.
Okay,
So
well, we're
there
going
you
to
go.
give you an Academy Award for this past movie, okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody, and we'll see
All right.
you out in the fleet. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.